I'm Gary Pocock, and this is my week 15 reflection for the online modelling course. This week I'm going to just reflect on the talk that my group gave on the energy theatre paper, and then I'll briefly mention one of the other papers that I particularly enjoy, which is the one on the 3D model of circuits. And finally, I'll just make a few comments on the course overall. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to repeat obviously what we said in our presentation, but I just want to talk about some things that didn't come up and some of the background to the paper that we discussed. So this is the paper I first discovered, which was the Schur paper, Negotiating Energy Dynamics. And we found that there was actually a series of papers all based around this idea of using actual students to model units of energy and to enact energy flows. And that really appealed to me. I've already done in Walker graphs in the mechanics course, and this seemed to me to be an even more sophisticated version of using students themselves to construct a model in physics. And the other thing that actually appealed to me about this paper was that it had some multimedia attachments where they had participants, and these participants were teachers. I think they were mainly primary and lower secondary teachers, and they were trying to enact an energy theatre for an incandescent bulb. I read that and I thought, great, this is very relevant to the circuits part of the course that we're doing. And so I watched these videos, and in the end they didn't feature prominently in our presentation, and there were a couple of reasons for that. One of them was the way in which the leaders of the groups allowed the participants to carry out their discussion. There was very little guidance on the part of the group leader, and this became particularly difficult when the participants were clearly on the wrong track and clearly had incorrect concepts of heat and light, and also they were not aware of the concept of a field, and that struck me as making it very, very difficult to get anywhere close to a reasonable model for energy transfer in a simple circuit. In fact, watching the video reminded me of a comment that I read recently in an interview, a paper published, an interview with David Heston. And the comment was, he was reflecting on the early days working with Malcolm Wells. And Malcolm Wells was already doing discovery learning before he came to Heston's. And David Heston just made this comment about discovery learning. The trouble with discovery learning is that students tend to mess about with the phenomena without progressing to insight. They need a more systematic approach to sense making. And I thought that aptly described what was happening in these videos. The researchers seemed to love it. They seemed to think that there was great conversations happening, but I know if I was one of the participants in these discussions, I would have come away very frustrated, because to me they didn't get close to a reasonable model. So I guess that's the difference between their approach and my more modelling influenced approach to this. It also highlighted for me the importance of fields, and now this is something that Swackhammer really emphasizes in his paper on energy, and he makes a big plea that the field concept should be introduced into schools at an earlier stage, and he cites Robert Karplus saying that he showed how the field concept could be introduced to second graders in preparation for a study of energy. And he cites this paper, which goes back to 1962, and unfortunately I haven't been able to track down that paper. I'd certainly like to read it. But Swakhammer also cites Karplas's book, Introductory Physics, which is a college text, and I did manage to download that because it was on the internet for quite a while. It's not there now because it's now a published book which you have to buy, but I downloaded it, and it's a really remarkable book, and I've read it and I need to reread it. But the way he's so careful in the way he introduces the concepts, and he gives so much insights into how to explain concepts such as a field and interaction at a distance. And it's something that I would be recommending that every person interested in modelling instruction should read. And even though it is a college text, I think it really helps. It would really help teachers of lower levels, give them some ideas about how to introduce the concept of a field into their teaching. And as I commented, trying to explain what happens with energy in an electrical circuit is actually one of the most difficult things. And a few weeks ago I went off and ended up researching on the Poynting vector to find out what the current model is. But even if you're not going into that depth, it's still quite challenging. And you really do need a field concept, particularly to explain how the light turns on almost immediately when you flip the switch. If you don't have a field concept, you end up resorting to this idea that electrons are pushing other electrons along the circuit, which is not a very adequate model at all. Okay, so that became, we did have a discussion of that in our talk, but it wasn't the main focus in the end. The main focus was the actual energy theatre itself, and the alternative to energy theatre, which was the energy cubes. And I think Ryan in particular was keen on the cubes, and he thought that the actual energy theatre was less appropriate for older students. I'm not so sure about that. I think that doing it at least once as an energy theatre would be very valuable. It really tends to stick in the memory if you're actually acting things out with your body. So that's something I'm actually teaching in next semester. So I'm definitely going to try it with the electrical circuit. But of course it's energy, so you could do it with any course that involves energy. Do it once, and then maybe switch to the cubes later on. The other thing I really liked about the paper, or the series of papers, was the emphasis on the substance model of energy. And I thought, yeah, that's a really good thing to bring out, and it seemed to me to work really well in making energy something that was easier for students to grasp. So out of the other papers, the one that really grabbed my attention was the 3D mechanical models of electrical circuits. I enjoyed that presentation, and I was particularly taken by Hannah's very simple circuits where she used Play-Doh and straws to build the circuits. I love the idea of actually constructing the circuit over the diagram, so you get this very clear juxtaposition, and just marking on your gravitational model, physical model, and the key circuit elements. So that is something that I'm definitely going to explore with my students next semester. I have to say it's something that's not really discussed in the literature, or perhaps it is and I'm just not aware of it, and that is just these models for electrical phenomena and what the limitations of these models and the dangers of them and the potential for misconceptions. So this is a gravitational model for electrical circuits. It seems to really help the students, and I'm just thinking, well, how far can you take this model, and at what point do you have to say, no, it's not really like this, and switch to a more sophisticated model? That's something I'm still not very clear about in my head, but maybe if I play with this model next semester with the students, I'll get a bit clearer about how far we can take this. Okay, finally, some general reflections on the course. Well, first of all, I have to say that it was a fantastic experience. I learned an enormous amount from it, so I'm very, very glad that I had the opportunity to do the course. There's no denying that doing a course online is difficult compared to face-to-face, particularly with the breakout discussions. And that was an area that I kept coming back to over and over again, thinking, how can we get better at doing this? And I can't say I have any simple answers. The only thing that I would mention that I've given some feedback before, but the only thing I would mention that I haven't mentioned before is when you have the breakout groups, what I notice is that it takes time for a group dynamic to develop and for a discussion to get going. And sometimes you just feel something was getting going and then we have to cut it off. And I think it just takes longer for these for the group dynamic to get going because we're not face to face. So if you know you're going to have, say, 2 breakout groups in the one session, I would be recommending having the same group members in your breakouts for both of them. Because I felt sometimes we had a conversation that was just cut off, and then when a second breakout happened, it was an entirely different group of people, and so we had to start all over again. Yes, so I think it would certainly improve the quality of the discussions if we had more continuity within a single session. I'm not saying we should have the same people in the breakouts week in, week out. I think it was important that we did all get to meet one another and talk to all the different people in the course. But within a single session, I think it would be really helpful if we had the same group throughout that session. What else can I say? The online demos were great. Matt and David, you were fantastic. I really appreciated the depth of your insights. The weekly reflections that we had to do, that was a great assessment item. It took me down all sorts of paths that I didn't expect to go down, and I learned a heck of a lot from those reflections. And the only other thing, which I think I mentioned elsewhere, is we got Edmodo going. It never really took off. Maybe because it just wasn't there right from the start. Maybe because it wasn't integrated into the course in any kind of formal way. But having some other forum in which the participants can interact outside of the online sessions, I think would be a good thing for future courses, so that we can build some kind of rapport and interaction, so it will make things a little bit smoother when we jump into our online sessions. But overall, well done everybody. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.